believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many kids are ready to have adult conversations, even as young adults, but they're not given that opportunity and they're always thwarted by, "You're not old enough to deal with that." It's like, well, how do you know if we don't have the conversation? And it allows parents to find out how mature their kids are, because a lot of kids are a lot more mature than their age.
Welcome to Gap to Gig, the show for dads navigating the in-between season when work, identity, and priorities start asking different questions. Here we talk about what that season looks like and how to move through it with intention. I'm your host, Michael Jacobs, and today I'm joined by Antwaun Thompson, though many people know him simply as Coach T. For more than 3 decades, Antwaun has coached and mentored young people across athletics, leadership, and life. He's worked with kids from elementary school through college, founded a nonprofit focused on developing tomorrow's leaders, built an online mentoring academy, and recently authored a book designed to help preteens and teens build the mindset and skills they need to thrive. What stands out most to me is that Antwaun's work is not just about performance, it's about character, confidence, resilience, and helping young people become whole, capable humans in a world that doesn't slow down for them. Antwaun, I'm really excited to chat with you today. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Thank you, Marco. I appreciate you having me on, and really my bio, which you described, is something that's really passionate about. I'm really excited about our conversation we're going to have.
Awesome. Thank you. I look forward to that. So you've spent decades working with kids and teens at really formative moments in their lives, right? I want to kind of start there. When you look at kids today compared to when you started coaching, what feels most different about the challenges they're facing now?
Lack of confidence, believe it or not, Michael, is one of the things that I spend more time with kids now. Is usually there's other skill sets that I think that they need to learn, but that's the one I spend the most time on. They don't have as much belief in themselves, and it takes a little bit more positive reinforcement than it used to. Not that I mind doing it at all. It's just one of the
Right.
things that bothers me specifically because I may be providing that, but what if the next person doesn't? What is
Right.
the potential fallback from that?
Right. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's such a lack of confidence today compared to years ago?
That's such a great question. There's so many different ways to answer that. I mean, I could really, I'll use my own experience, from the early years of coaching, like you asked before. There's really a big difference between the level of excitement from kids to be a part of something. I think a lot of it now is more social than it is for the real reason for getting together and having basketball as an example. Of years ago, it used to be like, oh my gosh, kids would try so hard. They spend so much extra time getting ready because they knew they wanted to they thought they knew it was going to be something special. Now I've seen kids that are just happy to be a part of something without putting that little extra something in to be a positive contributor to something. Just being a part of the clique is satisfactory enough for them. And that bothers me also because I think every child has the ability to be a leader. And I see a lot of them being followers because they don't take the time to find out what their potential leadership and or qualifications are.
Right. That's interesting. It's, with everything going on in today's day and age, right? And there's all sorts of modern technology and things that have kind of come into play, right? And social media and things that have maybe driven some of the discourse around what kids, regardless of age, right? I think, whether they're in 5th grade or 10th grade or whatever they may be, right? Like I I imagine you still see some of those same confidence issues and same maybe lack of great ambition that we kind of hope for our kids to the kids to take. And I know you talk a lot about about personal development not necessarily being consistently addressed in schools. And you don't know, yes, you can provide that mentorship, that encouragement to reach for more, to go for more in your role as a coach, but you don't know what the next person who's going to be leading them is going to do. From your perspective, what are kids missing that us as dads assume we're getting else that our kids are getting elsewhere?
Feedback, the necessary feedback. I'll as I was listening to your message, there's something that kind of popped into my head. I'm in my first year of directorship ball for a school, And that entails me being over the art program from middle school all the way through high school for boys and girls. And one of the things I talk a lot about, and this is probably something you may want to dig more into, but every time a child participates in the sport, there are four components that come into play. And I think these are part of what affects their ability to succeed and for some kids to even participate. And we talk about pressures. And those four things are being who they're trying to please. Number one, they're trying to please their parents when they compete. They're also trying to please their coach and compete. They're also trying to please their teammates when they compete. But the most important person they're trying to please is themselves. And you put all those into one basket, and then you put a child into any environment, sporting event, or other extracurricular activity. And that's a lot of pressure
Right.
to perform. And now it's like, okay, what do I do? But at least question, what are kids missing? Well, it's what happens after those particular extracurricular activities, sporting event, or whatever it may be. That ride home is probably the most difficult thing for a child to go through because there's something they don't know before they get in the car. Or for some kids, they do know. Either mom, dad, or brother, sister are going to ream them about how they played, which they already know how they played. If they didn't play well, they already know. He's already told them. Teammate probably already told them. So now they're getting more of that. And then it's, you should have done this or you should have done that. Like they already know what they should have done after, whatever. What a child needs to hear in that situation is, hey, I was really great to see how you guys competed. You guys competed really well, really hard, and really proud. It was great to watch you play. Leave it at that. That means the last experience they have from a opportunity that didn't go well is something positive. And that's what they're able to build on. But kids are not getting that because parents are so involved. They're so competitive. They're making everything about winning and losing. And that stalls the personal growth and development for kids and their relationship development.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that myself. I coached hockey for many, many years at youth hockey. And I didn't care if we won a game 6-0. I don't care if we lost the game, 10-0. Right. To me, the reason I coach and what I really enjoyed about it was watching the kids grow. Right. And they're going to make mistakes. And how I approach those mistakes, I think was much more important than anything else I did as a coach, right? Because I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to give them positive feedback. But when they make mistakes, I could give it to them as, that negative feedback that we all kind of expect, like, oh, you did terrible. Oh, that was not a great play. Why did you do that? Right. Start questioning them. That might feel good in the moment to like let that off your chest as a coach. But well, for me, it didn't. Like I would feel guilty if I did that. But for what I found was it's more of an opportunity than a mistake, right? Like okay, they didn't put themselves in the right position to receive the puck in hockey, or maybe it was they didn't spot up in the right spot on the court for basketball, or they didn't, get the right jump off of the base in baseball. It's okay. That wasn't the right spot for in that particular situation. Here's why. And next time you go and do that, here's what will help you succeed, right? Like I want to put you in the right spot to succeed as opposed to tell you that you are in the wrong spot to fail. And so I saw it all the time of parents getting on their kids' cases. Oh, that wasn't your best game. You could have done this or you could have done that. I have no problem going up to the kids and being like, ignore what your parents said. They have no idea what they're doing, right? And I try to tell the parents, from the beginning of the season on, like, I want to encourage them. I want to see them grow because the way they play at the beginning of the season versus the way they play at the end of the season they're like two different athletes if we're doing our jobs as coaches and as parents. Right. But like you
Right.
said, they need that positive feedback. Right. But it's not just that the feedback has to be positive. Like you could point out, okay, that wasn't the best play. I think you can do that. Right. But here's why, and here's how you can do it better the next time so that you can, succeed and go further in your sport. So like you're learning from your experiences, right? but it doesn't have to be framed as a negative thing, right? And the thing I despise most as a coach was watching parents yell and scream, right? It is just, you feel so bad for the kids, for the players. Like, they're there to have fun, right? These are youth athletes. At the end of the day, you're playing a game. So you're not saving the world, right? You're playing a
Right.
game, and what you put into it is what you can get out of it, typically with experiences. And I think that's the same thing with youth sports. You can learn a lot from youth sports, right? But you have to be put in an environment that allows you to do that. And when you talk about, like, the parents on the way home, they don't know if their parents are going to chastise them for their performance. That's not setting them up to learn from their experience and what to do best, right? It's like, we need to explain to them, this is maybe another way to look at the situation. Here is another perspective that will help you understand the game better, understand the skill better. Like, here's how you can shoot the ball better. I noticed that you're doing this thing with your elbow when you're shooting, and it's, not helping your shot.
Techniques, yeah.
Maybe if we make this adjustment, we'll practice it a few times and let's check out the progress, right? That is helpful, as opposed to, man, you missed all your shots last game.
It's
Right.
like they don't work out already. But you mentioned, yeah, a great point where you kind of touch on it in regards to that too, is, allowing the kids to be a part of the process of them getting better, and how coaches can do that. Now, I know for a fact a lot of coaches wouldn't do this just because I think it's a shot to their egos. And I've always told kids, I have no ego to bruise. If you can teach me something, make me a better coach, hey, fire away, because I want to be the best coach I can be. But one of the things I started doing several years ago is in practices and in games, I ask questions and I allow the kids to give input. Case in point, halftime of the game, where you make adjustments, you assess the first half, and then I ask the kids, do they have any things they want to add? Nine times out of 10, Michael, you know who was the first people to chime in? The players that were not playing a lot in the game. They were actually watching and going, hey, they wanted to provide feedback to help their teammates. Well, the first thing I noticed was when they were doing that, everybody felt like they were part of the success of the team, whether they were on the court or not. And that led to one of my quotes I always tell kids: be in the game even when you're not in the game. And that means that you can always contribute to the success of the team. And so I saw the positivity in that, and not so much always in the results, but the engagement. And,
Right.
it's like, and that's what you really want from top to bottom. You want to have the engagement, because if a young person that doesn't get as much quality participation as others still can feel like they're part of the success of that team, regardless of how much it's what everybody calls playing time. I call it contributing to the success of the team as opposed to playing time, because you know as well as I do, even somebody can have more ice time but produce very little, and somebody
Yeah.
can get on with very little time and actually provide more success to the team. So the amount of time that you're on a quarter of field is irrelevant. It's what you do with the opportunity given to you. And that's one of the things I think is really important. Now, I say that because I think it changes how kids, for how they compete. If they know their time may be limited, hey, I'm gonna make the most of this. So coach, it makes it harder for him or her to take me out if I'm able to do more.
Right. Yeah, and there's been seasons, like when I was coaching, where we do, like, sort of a player of the game type of thing, where they would get a belt or a trophy or something, like, to carry with them for that until the next game, right? And I'd always choose players not for the obvious things, right? Not for the, oh, you scored 3 goals today, you're getting the automatically, player of the game, right? That's not what matters. It's who is contributing to the team the best, right? Who maybe set up the play, who sent those passes, who got back on defense quickly and prevented a goal from being scored or a shot from being taken. You know, who who picked up their players when, they were down, they just let up a goal and they came back to the bench and they're like, hey, shake it off. You'll get on the next one, kind of thing. Those, to me, are the players of the game. And I think that demonstrates to them, or I'm hoping that demonstrates to them, that there is games, learning these sports is teaching you life lessons and how to treat people, right? And what's actually important at the end of the day, right? Is we are all humans when it comes down to it. And, you can get on your teammates' case for messing up a play, or you can encourage them to go back out there and try harder, right? That is something that as coaches, especially as parents, we can encourage our kids to do, right? Because
100%.
otherwise, the flip side of that is you teach your kids that the best way to respond to, challenges is to yell and scream at everybody. Is that the kind of people, the kind of kids we want to raise today? Like, do we want the next generation to be a bunch of, loudmouth people that are just, can't control their temper,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you know what? There's every time I listen to people's kind of things, you could always bring something to the forefront of my mind. My the coach that I most emulate my coaching style and philosophy is to me the best coach ever coached the game, and that's Dean Smith. And was at the University of North
Okay.
Carolina for 36 years. And there's some one subtle thing that's a part of that program to this day that was started by he and his program. And you were mentioning point out that, being unselfish, the assist, and looking out for your teammates. A lot of people that watch basketball, some people don't look at it. And that is every time a player scores, they're supposed to the person that passed them the ball to acknowledge that they appreciate the pass. And I like your idea about the belt thing. You gave me an idea. I think I'm going to start that next year, and I'm going to make it assist. The player that has the most assist is really to me the MVP. It's the most unselfish players who want to look out for the entire team, not just for themselves. But that's just something that makes. If I know that I'm always passing the ball and you score, I'm going to feel great because I know I helped you get that basket. I didn't get the points, you got them. But plus, you also know that everybody's going to play harder because they know they have a chance to get the ball if they know that assists are the most important part of it.
Right. Well, that's a great point. I love that. It's we see that a lot in hockey too, right? And nowadays in the NHL, at least, it is essentially the common courtesy, right? When the goal scorer scores, he immediately points to the player that passed him the puck.
Gretchen.
Or like,
Yeah.
you have to acknowledge that, otherwise your teammates get on you, right? And
Sure.
that's kind of a
Right.
good example. I don't think you saw that back in the 80s and 90s much in hockey, but nowadays that's, but that sort of mindset required learning, and they probably learned that in youth sports first, right? They didn't just learn that when they got to the NHL. They learned that in youth hockey as they were growing up. And where they learn that from, it's from their coaches, it's from their parents, right? It's from the people surrounding them. So I wanted to ask you, you as a coach and a mentor, you've seen what helps young people feel confident and grounded. As dads, what can we be paying attention to at home that we might be overlooking to help our kids, get that confidence that you talked about earlier, but also at the same time, still feel grounded and not, don't let it become to the point where you're overconfident and almost egotistical.
Well, I think one of the things that I have got, and this based on conversations having with kids, and for me, it's the first two things I always do is make sure that I'm connecting with kids first and foremost. Number two is listening without judgment. And a lot of conversations and feedback that I've received is not being heard, even at home,
Mm.
and being valued. And to them, it's a foregone conclusion that parents are heads of the household. They know there are rules in place for their kids to follow. But at the same time, as kid older, they're trying to establish themselves, their identity. Am I that alpha male that needs to be groomed as so that I'm not overbearing and things of that nature? That's that growth process and that relationship building that kids need. And believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many kids are ready to have adult conversations, even as young adults, but they're not given that opportunity, and they're always thwarted by they're not old enough to deal with that. It's like, well, how do you know if we don't have the conversation? And it allows parents to find out how mature their kids are, because a lot of kids are a lot more mature than their age. Now, I know I've seen that, and I'm surprised by it. And I've told a couple of kids that, and then I felt bad by saying I felt like I was sliding him, but I was just so impressed by how mature they were at a young age. And I think that is so important because it's not just about their personal growth and development. It's also about their relationship building process with their parents, because that goes beyond the four walls of your household. Wherever you are with them, there's nothing better. You have kids.
Yeah,
The-
I have to.
Okay, you have two. How old are they?
They're both in high school. So I've got a senior in high school and a freshman in high school.
Okay, a freshman and a senior. Wow. Okay, perfect example. So if your senior son would ask you a question and then your freshman son asks you the same question, would you be quick to stop and listen to the whole question from the senior and maybe second guess what your freshman asked you, just in general terms? If it was something a little deeper than what you would expect a freshman to have as far as a conversation.
This is not going to help your argument, I don't think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I actually almost flip it around. I'd probably give my freshman
Yeah.
more of the benefit of the doubt. But my
Okay.
senior is more of a, has a little bit more of a goofy side sometimes, but
Okay.
also many times he can have those mature
Yeah.
conversations. So
Real
it's
conversations. Yeah. So the point be, why not see both of them and give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, let me gauge this situation. Well,
right.
that's just going to walk away going, man, mom, dad, they really listened to me. They really allowed me to speak my mind. And you'd be surprised how quickly that confidence grows. Because now the other part of that is, what if there's that one of those situations, that sticky situation that comes up that they're like, "Man, I can't talk to mom and dad about that." They're going to go like, "Yeah, you should have come with me, whatever." Come to me before, but then they present it in a way you're like, "Yeah," and instead of just telling them what to do, it's like, "Well, what are your thoughts on that?" Well,
Right.
allowing them an opportunity to give you that feedback, they're going to go like, "Wow." Now their confidence grows. Now they're going to be more willing to have the conversation. You're going to feel more confident about them making the right decisions and not worry as much. And a lot of kids haven't been giving that leash, if you will, hasn't been loosened enough for them to grow. And I think that's what I would highly recommend, because I think the relationship part is more important than anything else.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I really like the part where you just said that ask them how they would respond to it or they would handle it. Right. I'm finding that, when I first came to that, it's like, okay, I need to be stoic. I need to show them that this is the way. But as they grow up, I'm trying to be more forthright with them about allowing them to have a say in the situation and asking them the questions first to get their perspective before I can sway their perspective, right?
Right.
And it's I shouldn't be at this point surprised that oftentimes their ideas are as good or better than what I can come up with, right? Because they're living most of these situations in these types of circumstances. But oftentimes they are a lot sharper than I think we give them credit for, right? And you're talking
Bingo.
about like how you've told kids this before, like that how impressed with their maturity you are. And that reminded me of about 5 or 6 years ago, I had these two brothers that I was coaching, twin brothers. One was a goalie, one was a forward. And one of them, the forward, was like, they were both like probably the most mature. I think they're maybe 12 years old at the time, mature 12-year olds that I've ever come across. They present themselves as 10 years older than they were. But one of them was very into the strategy behind the game and was always asking questions. He had demonstrated leadership amongst his peers. And so I decided that towards the end of the season, I pulled him aside. I said, you know what? I'm so impressed with your leadership. I want you to be coach for the day. I want you to set the lineups. I want you to give the pregame talk and all the speeches between periods. Because I know that you can handle this. And I know that our team will respond to you because I know what kind of leader that you are. And he lit up right when I told him that. And he went home and he came back and for our next game, and he had 3 pages of notes. Like he had prepped himself for his pregame talk, for his lines. Like he had put thought into this. And it was mind blowing to me of like a 12-year-old could do a lot more than we give him credit for. Right. And it motivated me to figure out, okay, that's one kid. How can I impact more? How do I now do this for other kids? And so as the years go on, I've had players do pregame speeches, do the talks between periods, set lineups, set practice plans with some guidance, right, where needed, right? They can't just put all their friends on one line and somebody else on another line, right? And try to bench somebody. Can't do all that, right? But 99% of the time, I don't have to make any adjustments. They pick up on this stuff fast, right? And if you give them the opportunity, you'd be surprised at what they can do. And it's easy to see as a coach. I think for me, it's been hard to see as a parent, hard to recognize it as a parent, right? Because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are, they start out as our babies. And now, as they grow older, it's like, okay, maybe you do know a lot more than I give you credit for. Maybe
Credit
you
for. Yeah.
are capable of doing so much more. And the confidence that goes along with that is unbelievable, right? Like when this kid coaches game, like he finished that game and he was just like, that was so fun. That was awesome. I want to do this again. Right. And then other kids are like, hey, I want to do that. And it motivated, inspired, and he
Yeah. The
became
growth.
him and his brother became referees, and they've, taken on other leadership roles, and they've done all these things as they've grown older. It's just been so impressive to me what kids can be capable of that we just don't always give them the credit for.
Well, you know what I take away from that story, and I know you did, but I think I just want to verbalize it. First, you give him that responsibility.
Yep.
Never sounded like it was overwhelming to him
Right.
because he was excited about it. To me, I guess I'm telling you this, that's the part that makes it exciting because he could have very easily been overwhelmed. He could have been coming back to you 10, 12 times. What about this? Should I do this? Should I do that? He took ownership of that and made it his own. That's the part that it's said part. This is what I caught. And that's exactly what's important about young people being given the opportunity to showcase what they can do, even if it's not the right thing. But because we had to learn from making mistakes, right?
Right.
So what if it didn't turn out well? And he would have been probably upset about it. But of course, you would step in and kind of help you with it. I know, but that's the part that really stood out to me is how he took ownership of it. Not only was he excited about it, he took it seriously, and
Right.
he took a mature approach to it, and obviously did a really good job with it, and it inspired his teammates. And I think that's amazing. And again, like I said, I'll give you the other end of the spectrum. So you're talking about empowering kids to take ownership of the strategic aspects of a team. I'll take it the other way. I had this experience, and this is by far, to me, my best coaching story to share. And this happened about 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Coaching a seventh and eighth grade boys team, and we are in the midst of going for our fourth consecutive championship, right? And we had gone to 6 championship games up to it in a row. So it's great. Everything's going great. So we have this incident where one of the players had a infraction, basically did something he wasn't supposed to do. I knew nothing about it until two of the eighth graders came to me the next day before practice. And they said, Coach T, this is what happened. And my initial response was, well, we going to do about it was my response. And I was expecting, oh, I don't know. Well, they did not blink an eye and said, we're going to make him sit in the bleachers and watch us run for his mistake. And I'm going, my eyes got big. I'm like, what? And at first I was like, that's kind of harsh. I'm like, no, I asked them, so I'm going to give them the opportunity. So I said, okay. So I asked the young man if he did. He said, yes. So here's what's going to happen. Sits in the bleachers. The guys are doing their running, and he's getting visibly upset because he realizes, hey, they're running for me. They're choosing to do this to teach me a lesson. And I'm thinking that's okay. That's enough punishment for a kid, right? Well, what I did tell him was, I said, I like that idea so much. I'm just going to make it my punishment for him. If you guys will impose any other disciplinary action, that'll be yours to do as a team. And because I couldn't think of anything else, so I was still there to make him do it. So after practice was over, I said, okay, you guys got a minute to kind of talk about it or whatever. So they did that, came back, and they said, we all talked about it and voted with the young man present, not without him, but they were all there. It was a unanimous decision that for our next home game, which happened to be the alumni game, he would not get to play, nor would he get to dress with the team, but he could sit on the bench. And my first question was two questions to him. Did he understand what was happening? He said, yes. Number two, what are you going to do now? So what was my question to him? He said, go home and tell my parents why I'm not going to be playing. And I say that's my greatest coaching story because I did not realize how much I had empowered all the entire team to make decisions that would impact the whole team. And I trusted them enough to make the right decision because they could have very easily done something totally extreme.
Right.
But it was a great decision, great learning moment. And one of the things I said was it's never to be talked about again. If we leave this gym, the situation is dealt with, we move forward. Never heard from the parents. We went on to go undefeated and win another conference championship. So it was a learning experience that didn't affect the team. It actually brought them closer together because everybody was more in tune and focused after. But I just want to share that story to kind of piggyback on your story that there's two ends of the spectrum where these young people are more than capable of making tough decisions at a young age.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that story. And in my story, I was inspired by the my player felt inspired himself and he inspired his team, but I left that whole situation feeling inspired of like these kids can do that. And I feel like in your situation, you also felt inspired
Right.
by the kids, right?
Yes.
And by their ability to take initiative and demonstrate some leadership and put what you've coached them into action.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And like you said, yeah, I did develop that inspired, but also again, like I said, I think it made me a better coach. I'm like, hey, I need to start challenging kids a little bit more
Yeah.
by doing these things.
All right. So you've worked with kids who have lacked positive environments, but also I assume also others that have had strong support systems at home. What role does the emotional tone of the household play in a child's confidence and behavior?
A lot, a lot. There's a young man that is now a junior at high school, and he has been put under so much pressure by his father. And I've had conversations with the dad about not direct, but I understand he wants what's best for his son.
Right.
But I view it as he lived vicariously through his son because he played and didn't get to the level he wanted. And I say that because I started training his son when he was in the fourth grade. And when I say he pushed this young man, he was having private lessons with me 2 times a day on Saturdays. He'd come in the morning, go have lunch, do whatever, do his weightlifting, whatever, and then come back and have another session. And I felt like that's a lot for a kid. And this is the same kid, by the way, that was one of the kids in the story I just told you. He was the by far the best player in that program I've ever coached. But the pressure, I know affects him, but he has such a reserved personality. And we had conversations during workouts, and there were little hints there. He goes, "I just wish my dad would push me so much. I just want to have fun." And I was like, "Well, you have to share that with them because if you don't, you're going to be like a robot. You're just going to be doing what your dad wants, what your dad wants. What my fear is that you're going to get burned out from the sport. And I know you love it. You have so much talent. I know you want to be the best you can be, but you have to take ownership of your own success. Which means if you start feeling like you're getting pushed too much, hey, dad, I need to take a break. I'm not saying I don't want to do it, but I want to take a break. The flip side of that is when I work with kids, the number one thing that parents come back and talk to me about is go, it's not about their athletic skills improving. They always say, I see so much more confidence and higher self-esteem in my child. And I said, that is the best compliment you get. I can teach, and I'm not bragging, just from experience. I can teach basketball with my eyes closed, laying, hanging upside down. But building confidence and securing that level of confidence that children should have is my number one priority. So when I hear that, I know I'm doing the right thing. And that's what needs to happen at home. Kids already know it's a competition, but if you put too much focus on it being a competition and it's no longer being fun, then those add to the other pressures kids deal with. Because you got to remember what parents don't realize too is the pressures that they feel at home is let's just use hockey or basketball, to perform at a high level. Well, that affects their social circles at school too, because
Right.
you want them to be the best they want to do. They just love being around their teammates, and as a team, they want to do well. But parents are like, well, you're not doing your part. So, well, I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing what coach asked me to do. And that's the next part that comes in. You're circumventing what the coaches do. Like versus with kids that I have now with this program, complete overhaul. So the first thing I know is not about X's and O's. It's about building the culture. The culture has to be built around positivity. It has to be built around excitement. It has to be built around enthusiasm. not just from the player's perspective, but the parents as well. Because if they know they're part of the process, they're going to relax a little bit more because they're gonna like, oh, Coach T's got it. Okay. My kid comes home from practice going like, man, practice went so fast. We're having so much fun. Well, maybe the parents will back off a little bit.
Right.
So that role at home is almost like an assistant coach. I'm the hard nosed coach. You're the soft coach. You're the one passing them on the back. Hey, you had a rough practice? Well, tell me about it. Why was it so tough today? You're like, man, I love coming home, being able to decompress with my mom or my dad, as opposed to getting home and being grilled. What if coach put you in there with the starters when you're practicing? My God, no, he didn't. Well, why didn't he? And it's like, let it go. Kind of let me do my thing. To me, that's parents have to be an assistant coach at home and the coach that builds up that confidence.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. It is, we coach team sports, but the team is more than just the players. It's the support systems around them, right? It's the coaches, it's the families, the friends, right? That make up a successful program. And they all kind of have to be in alignment, right? In order for it to work. And that means parents need to respect what the coaches are doing. The coaches need to respect what the parents are doing, right? At the center of it all remains the kids, right? And that's what I think as parents, we lose perspective on too easily sometimes, right? I've seen it
Absolutely.
a ton where parents make it about themselves. They might not intentionally be doing that, but it becomes about themselves real quick, right?
Yeah, it does.
And at the end of the day, we're doing this for our kids, right? We're there to celebrate them and what they are accomplishing and what they're learning. And like you said earlier, it's those life skills that they're learning in playing these sports that is really why they're doing it, right? That is the biggest reward
Yeah.
of all.
So if I were to ask you a question, and then I mean, because you and I asked, I'll ask it to you. If you were to ask the parents of your players, what life skills are they learning through hockey? Do you think they would be able to tell you what they are?
100%. I think that would be almost a no-brainer question for them because I try to keep an open line of communication, right? Not just with the players, but with the parents too. And I saw, particularly at the end of each season, when I'd get the thank you cards and when the parents would come up to me and shake my hand and thank me for the season that their child had. It wasn't, thank you for helping them score 60 goals. It was never that. It was thank you for making him not just a better player, but a more confident kid, or thank you for making him, more sportsmanlike, or just, I mean, they don't want to use the word sportsmanlike, but just have a better attitude, positive, or, he had a rough year. We had a lot of health issues in the family, but this was his kind of escape. And you made it fun throughout the year and they can't wait to come back next year. Right. So I think that for the most part, if the parents are involved, if they're showing up to games, and as the older they get, they typically don't show up to the practices anymore, right? The older they get. So it's more of they show up to the games and the events around the teams. If if there's any kind of like team meals or anything like that, they see what's going on and they see how their kids are growing from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. It's easy for me as a coach to be like, oh yeah, now your kid, when he started the season, he could barely lift the puck off the ice. Now he's, shooting the top corner, no problem. Like that's an easy thing to show off. Nobody cares about that, right? As parents, what we cared about most is, did our kids learn something from this? And like, are they a better person today than they were at the start of the season? And oftentimes, my hope is that we are giving them that confidence, right? I think that is probably the biggest, easiest win that we can have as coaches for kids in sports is helping them build that confidence, right? And having the right attitudes and doing it
Yeah,
is probably the other one, right?
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so many stories to tell you. This is crazy. So, but the reason I asked that question because there are parents that have asked and they don't know. They couldn't tell me. They think it's all about the skill and the team strategies and philosophies and like believe it or not, those are the least of our concerns. Number one, we're trying to make them one of the best individuals they can be, both on and off their respective sport platform. If it's hockey on the ice, on the basketball court, on the football field, soccer field, on the tennis court, volleyball, wherever it may be. And so after sharing some of that, it's kind of surprising, but it leads to what you're talking about. That open communication between parents and coaches is so important because I'm sure based on what you share with me, if a parent had a concern about anything with their child playing for you, they could ask that their son, and their son could tell them exactly what the issue is because your communication with them is so transparent that the parent would never need to come to you. And that's kind of the approach I have is you should never have a one-on-one with me because everything your child needs, they're going to get whether they want it or not. Because if they say, "Hey, coach, how can I contribute to the success of the team? Why do you need to do X, Y, and Z?" And then they go, "Hey, why didn't coach plan you?" Well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. Just what coach told me I need to improve on. When I improve on X, Y, and Z, my opportunities to contribute to the success of the team will go up. And like your situation with parents coming to you into the season, like I said, this is I just finished. We just finished our first season, and the number of parents that said that that what I did this first year totally changed the culture because the kids wanted to be a part of the program. There were several kids that were not going to play this year because of the experience they had in the past, and to me, that's detriment, and it speaks negatively upon the leadership of the program. And you know how important coaches are. I know coaches want to win and all that stuff like that. But say at the end of the day, like you said, it's about the kids. And as long as you keep it about the kids, everything else will fall into play. When you make it about winning and losing, and coaches make it about their egos and their records and their championships and things of that nature, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I always said as a coach, I had two main goals for every season. One is that the kids had so much fun, they want to sign up for the next season. Like as soon as the season ends, they're telling their parents, I want to sign up again. Right. Like that was sort of my measuring stick. How many kids return every year? Right. Because if I'm giving them an environment that makes it fun, then they are hopefully that's something I want to continue to do. Right. And then my other goal is that they grow as people, right? As not just a player, but as a human being, right? As a person.
Right.
And oftentimes when I'd reach out to parents, be like, oh, your kid made, I just wanted to, let you know that your kid made a great play. I didn't really care about the play. I'd be like, your kid made a great play, but here's why. Because they took something that they learned and they applied it, right?
Right.
Or they blocked the shot knowing it would help the team, right? They were willing to like make the sacrifice for the team. And that, like, I just want you to know, as a coach, that is something that you should be proud of as a parent, especially the parents that don't know the sport so well, right? But
Right.
again, it comes back to that open communication that I think us as
Yeah.
parents, it's hard to, we just kind of, sign up our kids for the sports and we make sure they get there. And then we just kind of like, okay, now it's your turn to take over as coach and you do your thing. But if we want our kids to succeed, we should be we can be part of that process to support them. And that the way we support them, we don't have to be the helicopter parent that's like sitting there managing their game and telling the coaches what to do, things like that, right? But we can ask questions and show our interest and keep them involved. And the only way to do that is to have that open communication with the rest of the team, with the coaches and whoever it may be.
Yeah. Absolutely agree 100%.
So I want to ask you one more question before we get into the speed round. If you had to leave dads with sort of one principle to anchor both what they are trying to get out of their own lives as dads, but also be do something meaningful as parents, what would that be? What would that
Be
principle be?
meaningful with parents. Ironically, it's going to be the same thing I would tell kids. There's three words that are really important, I think, in every child's life, but also in every household relationship building with kids and also between parents too. And that is simplicity, keeping everything simple. Life's already complicated enough, not only just for the kids, but also for parents. You have a job, you're trying to take care of your family, you have other things you have to take care of. And if you have active kids and playing more than one sport, you got to have them everywhere.
Right.
So it's already a complicated process. Keep the process simple. The second one is the effort that you put into. your families, be it in the household or outside. Make sure that that effort is consistent everywhere. Because when you put effort in one place and not another, you're teaching your child something, where to put their effort and where not to put their effort. If you're teaching your kids, you want them to put their best foot forward no matter what they do, you have to put your best foot forward no matter what you do as a parent. And then the last one is your attitude. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is a positive attitude almost always determines your altitude in life. It's something I always tell kids. Well, we want our kids to have a positive attitude. Well, parents have to also lead by example, and that is having a positive attitude. And that's even in those tough situations, take a deep breath and go, hey, my reaction to this situation is a teaching and learning opportunity for my child. How do I want them to walk away from this situation? And I'm also teaching them how to deal with difficult situations, conflict resolution, or conflict transformation, as a friend of mine told me it's also called. So simplicity, effort, and attitude. Those are the three things that I think every parent needs to be reminded of. Keep things simple. Life is already complicated enough. Apply maximum effort no matter what you're doing, because we also know the harder we work, the more we achieve what we set out to achieve. And then thirdly, positive attitude.
It's awesome. I love that. It's very, I see the effectiveness of it and the simplicity of it, but it's like, it's something we can all do, right? It's practical,
Right, exactly.
right? That is,
Exactly.
like you said, we live in a very complicated world, and sometimes we just need, like, and there's, tons of different motivators out there. Sometimes we just need something that's practical. It's,
Yep.
and
Take
simplicity,
the
effort,
pressure off.
attitude. I love that. It's just so straightforward. So we'll go from the straightforward to the nonsensical and jump into our speed round if you're ready. 5 quick questions
Okay.
have nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
What's the first kids show theme song that comes to mind?
Oh, boy, kid. Oh my gosh. You're on the Flintstones.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, I'm aging myself.
Now it's gonna be stuck in my head. I haven't heard that song in quite a while. What was your very first job?
Oh, paperboy. I was a paperboy. My
Paperboy.
first job. Yeah,
Awesome.
hated it. Yes.
Good experience though, I bet.
It was. It was.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Would you rather spend 24 hours with a toddler-sized T-Rex or a T-Rex-sized toddler?
T-Rex sized toddler.
Why is that?
They were keeping me away. They keep me on my toes 24/7 for sure. That's why.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's your go-to karaoke song and the one you would sing if you had to?
Oh my gosh. It would be Al Green. Yeah, it would be Al Green. Let's Stay Together. It's my favorite,
Nice.
one of my favorite songs. Yeah.
Classic. Love that. And finally, what's the weirdest thing you've ever carried around in your bag, briefcase, or pockets?
Oh my gosh. The weirdest thing would probably be the ticket from the Michael Jackson concert I went to in 1988, because I didn't want to lose it. I had to find out where I was going to keep this ticket. So I carried it in my wallet for the longest time.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Very cool. All right, so that's the end of the speed round. I appreciate you going through that with me. Before we wrap up, though, I want to give you the floor. You're doing a lot of important work through your book, your mentoring programs, and the platforms you've built for kids and families. Where should listeners go if they want to learn more, get involved, or support what you're building?
Absolutely. So my nonprofit, if I just wanted to just touch on that really quick, if I could, why it's so important, JLT Fieldhouse, name of the nonprofit, and the website's jltfieldhouse.org. It is a nonprofit named after my late father, who served in the Marine Corps for 30 years. And unfortunately lost him in 1996 to leukemia from his time in Vietnam. But the biggest part of that is that he was not my biological father, but he adopted my older brother and I when he married our mom. Was in a not so great marriage with our biological father. And I say all that because you and I wouldn't be having this conversation had he not come into my life. And it was a way of honoring the sacrifice he made, not only for us, but for this country, one of the ultimate sacrifice. And the lessons he taught us are literally what I pay forward now. And my wife and I weren't able to have kids of our own, but I believe that I was given a gift to impact more kids. And it's something I don't take lightly. So every day I'm reminded of my father, because it's right. Number one, every time I put that shirt on, it has his initials on, it reminds me that I'm representing him and what he taught my brothers and I want to make sure the young people know how successful you can be if you give them the right guidance. And he provided that for us. So that's what this nonprofit's all about. And as you mentioned early on in my introduction about educating and supporting next generation leaders, but it's coaching and mentoring the next generation. And another example I want to throw in there, when my assistant coach, my top assistant coach, came up through that nonprofit. So when I got this job, he was the first person I called, and we had a successful season because of his presence, his energies, excitement, enthusiasm, and understanding the complexities not only of X's and O's, but about the personal development, because he grew up in it and he had a tough upbringing, and he's risen above it and beyond it, and he exceeds expectations as a young person. But he also bridges the gap between myself and the players. So he was coached and mentored, and now he's coaching and mentoring. So he's a perfect example of the benefits of this nonprofit. And so you can go to that website, and it also links to my Coach T's Corner website, which is where it has the mentoring programs that I offer, and also have some free resources for parents as well. And I have a wonderful network of people that started a private LinkedIn group. It's called the Village of Inspiration. And it's just 19 individuals from around the world that have come together that do exactly what I do, which is to inspire the next generation of leaders and make them the best versions of themselves that they can be. And as you mentioned, I wrote a book, and the book is called The C of Success. And C is an acronym, which stands for simplicity, effort, and attitude. And it is available on, okay, make sure I get this right. Yeah, available on Amazon. And it's the ultimate guide to success for preteens and teens. And in the book, I talk about 11 different skill set areas I think young people need to learn. It has stories, so I'll go through stories in there. And my brother, who was an educator, wrote the foreword, and having him support this project speaks volumes to what he sees as a powerful tool for not only students, but also for parents. And I host two podcasts. One is the one that you see behind me is Backdrop Your Development Tomorrow's Leaders, where I interview people like yourself, coaches, and others that impact young people. And I co-host a podcast with a fellow youth empowerment coach from New York, Keith Senzer. We have a podcast called Teen Speak, Empowering Today's Youth, where young people, middle school, high school, and college students reach out to us to be on the podcast, and they talk about challenges that they've gone through, but more importantly, the strategies that they've used to overcome those challenges. And they're the voice of the voiceless for those that may not feel comfortable enough coming on and talking about it. And we've had kids as young as fourth grade, and we've also had an All-American fencer from Northwestern University that came on to talk about body shaming. So everything I'm doing is all about kids and putting them in a position to be successful.
That's awesome. What a amazing set of things that you are building, right? There's just so much behind it, so much thought and history behind like your nonprofit that I wasn't even aware of. It's beautiful. I love all the stuff that you're doing. I think it's so cool. And, I really appreciate you being on the show with me today, Antwaun. Your perspective on how parents approach their kids and youth sports, it's so clear and so real, right? Like we don't always talk about, we see the crazy parent that's yelling at every game and stuff. We don't always, we might point and laugh a little bit or whatever, but there are real implications to that, right? And you clearly come from a place of deep care and lived experience, and you're helping so many more kids become greater adults, right? And I think so many parents benefit from the work that you do. And I think a lot of dads today are going to learn a lot from what you've shared in the way you've talked about leadership and development and showing up for the next generation. So thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate having you here. And finally, before you go, if you're a dad listening to this and you find yourself in between navigating a season that feels different, head to gap2gig.com and subscribe to the Gap to Gig newsletter. It comes out every Friday. It's a quieter space to reflect on work, life, and what really matters right now. And if this conversation resonated, consider sending it to another dad who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Michael Jacobs. Thanks for showing up and listening to Gap to Gig.